1. The radar blip. At exactly 0637 hours, inside the dim glow of the Combat Information Center, CIC, aboard USS Samson, a faint echo lit up the radar console. One blip. No identifying data. Just a flicker. Location: 380 nautical miles southwest of Acapulco. Deep in international waters, far from shipping lanes, fishing grounds, or commercial air corridors. The track was fast. Too fast. 50+ knots and accelerating, moving low and straight across the ocean's surface. The CIC operator leaned forward. No AIS return. No transponder. No distress signal. Just raw speed and silence. The silhouette, when run through Samson's automatic target recognition, confirmed the suspicion. A cartel-style go-fast boat. Long, narrow, fiberglass hull, and notoriously difficult to track. These boats don't loiter. They run until they make landfall or get caught. Today, someone noticed. 2. The smoking gun. As the CIC tracked the contact, infrared optics and flyer cameras were queued up on Reaper 1's external feeds. Within minutes, the Seahawk's sensors captured it. Figures on deck tossing objects overboard. The bundles were consistent in size and density, each about 25 kilos. A sharp-eyed technician confirmed. Not fishing gear, not fuel, not waste. That's cargo. One bundle burst open on impact, sending a fine mist across the water. Thermal cameras caught the splash, distinctly different from a neutral object. A drug discard event. And just like that, what had been a suspicious contact was now an active felony in progress on the high seas. The smugglers were erasing evidence, but in doing so, they triggered Rule 1 of maritime pursuit. Once you start dumping, you've already confessed. 3. The commander reacts. Commander Matthew Harding didn't wait for a report to make its way up the chain. A 22-year Navy veteran with tours across CENTCOM and SOUTHCOM, he recognized the signs. This wasn't just smuggling. It was an organized, strategic drug running through international corridors, using speed, shadows, and silence. Condition 3. Launch Reaper 1. I want full overwatch, immediately. Within moments, the Seahawk's rotors began spinning. Flight crews scrambled. Fuel, weapons, optics. Ready? Reaper 1 launched off the Samson's flight deck, its shadow trailing across the steel hull. Above the waves now, a warbird with orders not just to watch, but to intervene. 4th Operation Pacific Watch. The Samson wasn't here on a routine patrol. She was part of Operation Pacific Watch, a classified, multi-agency task force with a singular mission: intercept transnational drug traffickers before they reach landfall. This stretch of the Eastern Pacific is one of the most trafficked drug corridors in the world. An aquatic freeway stretching from Colombia and Ecuador, past Central America, and into North American markets. The U.S. Navy, Coast Guard, DEA, and partner nations coordinate under Pacific Watch, trading intelligence, surveillance assets, and rapid interdiction capabilities. Samson's patrol zone wasn't random. It was targeted. The radar contact wasn't an accident. It was the reason she was here. 5. Eyes in the sky. At 0649 hours, the roar of twin General Electric turbines broke the calm, a thunderclap against the vast silence of the Pacific. Reaper 1, a Navy MH-60R Seahawk, punched out from the flight deck of USS Samson, slicing low across the ocean's skin at just 200 feet. It wasn't cruising, it was hunting. The crew on board was hand-picked. 2 Navy door gunners, armed with M240S and trained for kinetic interdiction at sea. A tactical sensor operator, glued to a multi-screen console feeding live inputs from surface radar, infrared heat maps, and electro-optical cameras. And 3 members of LEDET-104, the U.S. Coast Guard's elite maritime boarding detachment, silent professionals strapped in with ballistic vests, drop holsters, and zip ties ready. This wasn't just an aerial patrol. This was a joint force spear tip, reaching hundreds of nautical miles ahead of the mothership. As Reaper 1 thundered toward the target vector, its AN/APS-153V radar swept the horizon in wide arcs, pulsing electromagnetic waves to map out surface contacts. The FLIR turret tracked temperature signatures, isolating the heat plume of twin outboards hidden behind sea spray. Then, confirmation. A small, fast-moving vessel matching the radar contact from CIC. No AIS. No flag. And it was dumping cargo, visible plumes trailing behind it like scars in the water. The Seahawk banked hard. The gunners readied weapons. The lead det team locked eyes and adjusted comms. The tactical operator toggled the feed, streaming live back to Samson and command elements monitoring satellite links. Inside that cabin, nobody spoke unless it mattered. This wasn't an exercise. There were no blue lanes, no orange cones, no blank rounds. Only real targets, real consequences, and real risk. Reaper 1 wasn't just watching. It was painting a kill box, identifying vectors, marking escape routes, and locking the smugglers into a tightening web of steel and ordnance. One wrong move from the target, and the Seahawk wouldn't ask twice. Because in this game, speed is survival. And today, the sky had fangs. 6. The chase. Once Reaper 1 made visual contact, the suspect vessel gunned its engines. Twin outboards at full throttle, the hull slammed against the waves, zigzagging westward, toward open water and away from help. More bundles flew into the sea, a panicked dump and dash. One burst on impact, exploding into a cloud of white powder. Reaper 1 tracked the entire scene, broadcasting live to Samson's CIC. This was more than pursuit. It was real-time criminal documentation, admissible in federal court. The go-fast boat had no idea just how many eyes were on them, and no idea how close justice already was. 7. Rules of engagement. Attempts were made to hail the vessel. No reply. Not on Channel 16, not on emergency frequencies. The dumping continued. Coast Guard and Navy liaisons reviewed the rules. The call was clear. You are authorized to fire warning shots. Reaper 1 shifted sideways. Door gunner positioned, sighted, and cleared hot. A burst from the .50 caliber sent rounds zipping into the ocean, precisely 10 meters off the vessel's starboard side. Enough to scare, enough to warn. The smugglers didn't flinch. There wouldn't be a third warning. 8. Disabling fire. Engines only, make it clean. Reaper 1 maneuvered to a rearward position, keeping line of sight while avoiding crossfire. The Seahawk banked. The gunner let loose, controlled fire straight into the engine mounts. The first outboard shredded in sparks and smoke. The second sputtered, stalled, and went silent. The go-fast boat slowed, then drifted. A hand went up, then another. The crew surrendered to the sea and the sound of rotor blades above. They were done running. 9th boarding action. From the Samson's port side, 2 RHIBs hit the water, high-speed insertion boats with full VBSS teams aboard. Navy personnel in tactical gear, leadet agents in plate carriers and sidearms. Weapons drawn, commands shouted. The smugglers didn't resist. Hands above heads, eyes down. They were pulled aboard, zip-tied. The boat, once a $1 million smuggling platform, now sat dead in the water, cargo gone, propulsion gone, mission failed. The boarding team called it in. Target secure. 2 detained. Vessel disabled. 10th. Evidence at sea. Around the scene, 47 floating bundles bobbed in the current. Wrapped tight in green plastic and burlap, weighted for balance but not enough to sink. Sailors and leadet agents worked fast, tagging and retrieving each bale with grappling poles and cargo nets. Once aboard, they slit one open. Inside, white bricks marked with cartel stamps. One brick was field-tested, positive for cocaine. Final weight, 560 kilograms. Street value, $58 million. Not just a bust. A body blows to a cartel pipeline. 11th legal authority shift. The vessel drifted lifeless in international waters, unmarked, unregistered, and unclaimed. No name, no country, no paperwork. It wasn't just a smuggler's trick, it was a legal loophole, one that backfired. Under international maritime law, particularly the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, such a boat is classified as stateless and thus without legal protection. That gave the United States full authority to act. Commander Harding didn't need a lawyer. He needed only facts. He looked at the LEDET officer on board. You have it. Jurisdiction formally shifted from the U.S. Navy to the U.S. Coast Guard. Now it was no longer a military interdiction. It was a federal criminal investigation with chain of custody forms, Miranda rights, and court filings. The two suspects weren't enemy combatants. They were now federal defendants, soon to be facing conspiracy, trafficking, and maritime smuggling charges in a U.S. courtroom. The warship had just become a crime scene. 12. The broken vessel. The smuggler's boat, once sleek, silent, and purpose-built for speed, was now a drifting husk. No functioning electronics, no GPS, no marine radio. The cockpit controls were shattered, coated in brine and splintered fiberglass. The outboards were wrecked, one from .50 cal rounds, the other from flooding. The hull creaked with every wave, water forcing itself through seams that had cracked under pressure and gunfire. The interior was stripped bare. No charts, no food stores, not even a fire extinguisher. It was a coffin with twin engines. Even lashed to Samson's RHIBs, the boat pitched erratically, rolling off axis and threatening to slip free. Commander Harding walked to the edge of the flight deck and peered down at it. It wasn't just derelict, it was dangerous. And now it was his responsibility. 13th decision to scuttle. At 0945 hours after a structural assessment by Samson's engineers and Coast Guard boarding team, the conclusion was unanimous. Unseaworthy, unrecoverable, a threat to navigation and personnel. Towing it would be risky. Leaving it adrift was worse. The legal pathway was clear. Controlled maritime disposal, authorized under Title 14, Section 89 of the U.S. Code. Harding didn't debate. He didn't need a second opinion. He simply said, log it. Prepare for scuttling. A mission log entry was made, coordinates marked, charges were drawn. The final act of the vessel would be written in water and steel. 14th. Controlled. Sinking Samson's explosive ordnance disposal, hot EOD unit, stepped into motion. With surgical efficiency, they rigged a 2-pound-shaped C4 charge just below the waterline on the port side. The goal wasn't dramatic destruction, it was controlled by flooding. Once clear, a technician keyed the remote. A dull thump echoed through the sea, more felt than heard. A clean breach opened, and water gushed in like an invading force. The boat listed sharply to one side, the hull groaning as the stern dipped. It fought the inevitable, but physics won. In under 2 minutes, it vanished below the surface, leaving behind a slick of foam and finality. No explosion, no oil fire, no cinematic finale. Just silence, the kind that speaks louder than noise. 15. Message in the water. That silence carried a message, not just to the smugglers who watched their ride vanish, but to cartel bosses watching sat feeds, to trafficking syndicates monitoring comm intercepts, to the men in suits and the ones with machetes, who fund, protect, and dispatch vessels like this every week. The Pacific isn't yours anymore. It belongs to billion-dollar warships, watchful satellites, and armed helicopters that don't chase. They intercept. You won't be followed. You'll be targeted, recorded, boarded, prosecuted, and if necessary, sunk. Not for revenge, not even for justice, but for order and deterrence. 16th Joint Force Precision Operation Intercept wasn't lucky. It wasn't routine. It was the playbook of modern maritime enforcement, executed with joint precision. U.S. Navy radar and ISR feeds acquired and tracked the target. Coast Guard Lee Det asserted jurisdiction and carried out the arrest. Reaper 1, the Seahawk, engaged with precision fire, surveillance, and overwatch. RHIBs deployed with Navy VBSS and Coast Guard boarding personnel. A seamless chain of custody was maintained from seizure to secure storage. Everything is documented. Everything is admissible. This was interagency fusion at its finest. Military discipline with law enforcement precision. USS Samson didn't just interdict. She executed an end-to-end takedown and delivered justice from 400 miles offshore. 17th Strategic Impact. To a civilian, it's just a boat. But to a cartel logistics chief, this is a catastrophe. 560 kilos lost equals $58 million vanished overnight. 2 operatives captured equals exposure of tradecraft, routes, contacts. 1 boat destroyed equals assets lost, supply chains broken. 1 interdiction broadcast globally equals morale plummets, paranoia rises. Each loss echoes. Each failure ripples back into the network like a stress fracture. Smugglers thrive on invisibility and impunity. Operation Intercept shattered both. From here on, they're not just dodging the Coast Guard. They're facing Navy destroyers with sonar nets, ISR constellations, and air support with kill authority. Every takedown is a message. You're not just losing cargo, you're losing the war. 18. Your turn, Commander. Now it's your moment. You're standing in Commander Harding's boots. It's 0637 hours. Your radar operator flags an unmarked contact. Speeding, unresponsive, dumping cargo. You're 400 miles offshore, no backup, no timeouts. Do you send RHIBs first, risking boarding teams in unknown conditions? Do you fire warning shots earlier? Do you wait to recover more evidence and risk letting the vessel escape? Every second is a gamble. Every choice has consequences. You can't replay the moment, but you can think it through, so what would you have done?